All right, so this is going to be a slightly different video. Obviously what just happened is you're seeing these major testimonials through funded companies for these students of mine. The most recent one is $166,000 through a funded company called FTMO. And instead of me answering all these questions, like, for example, should I be funded? What's better, personal accounts or funded accounts? I want to give you not just the answer to that, but also perspective on why it probably is that you're failing in trading. And my perspective is very different than I have acquired enough experience in this space to understand what's going on. There's nothing right or wrong about it. It's just whether or not it's appropriate to you. So we're going to have a chat, sit back, relax. There's only a couple of times you're going to have to actually look at the screen, but this will give you a very good idea as to whether or not you're thinking about things in the right way. So let's begin here. The first thing is this. I've been trading for a very long time. You guys know that. You guys know that I've been around this for a long time. I've been teaching for 10 years. If you've been inside of the community, you've known I've been doing this community format for 7 years. Through that time, I didn't know what funded was. I knew what it was, but it wasn't available to us. So it's not something I considered. During 2020, 2021, you started to see funded being a thing. And the major company was FTMO. Amazing company. Sadly, they're no longer around for Americans, right? And we're going to get into that because that's what changed everything. Once they went away, once they weren't accessible to us, everything changed, right? So I've been growing my personal accounts for a very long time. I've been teaching people for a long time. I was in a good place during 2020, right? Other than what was going on in the world, I was in a very good place. At some point, my goals and all that got really accelerated. And I ended up looking more into funded because it was becoming more popular among students, amongst the internet. People that I knew that had only been trading for 2 years, 3 years were building companies for funded to fund traders. So I had to pay attention. I was forced to do that. It never made sense for me because why would I trade other people's money? At some point, why would I give up 60-40, 70-30? That was the norm back then. 70-30 split, 60-40 split. You would make 100,000 and they would take 60,000. You would make 1,000 and they would take 600, right? So, I mean, you would keep 600, they would take 400. It was the norm. But then things started getting the same way it always is. Something good is always destroyed by greed. At some point, companies started popping up everywhere. And now, because FTMO, for example, had to compete, they had to go to 80-20 splits, right? It was better at 70-30 because at 70-30, I think the math made more sense for the business to be able to sustain. But when these other companies started popping up, I think they didn't understand how easy their rules were to pass for people who knew what they were doing. So I got this idea back then to then start creating these bots. Now, let me make this clear. This is not me pitching bots or pitching automation. I am a manual trader. I trade every day with the community, right? You guys know that. By the way, this video is probably going to end up on YouTube. So this is where I plug the community. I trade every day with the community. They have a lot of success in here. We create traders all the time, but this is all manually done. They're not given some signals or like automated indicators or automated systems. That's not what we do. It's all automated. It's all manual where I update every single day. I do webinars. I do all this stuff where my hands are part of these setups, okay, and these trades. But somewhere along the lines, I've always had this dream, right? The dream was simply I wanted to create something that was an aggressive version of me, something that I could never tolerate risk-wise. You ever watch those movies where these exist in the history of trading? There's been people who have hacked the market. They find these moments in the market where they hammer down. They take these full leverage, full tilt moments where either it goes really well and they change the trajectory of everything, or they flop and it's over, right? I realized during 2021, around that time, 2022, okay, I'm going to start working on this because these people, they're not that smart. They're allowing you to trade at whatever leverage you want. They're allowing you to pay them $1,000 to access, what would be at that time like 20, 40, 20, 30,000 of actual funds, depending on the broker. There was so many of them doing the exact same thing. Literally, it was just the same rules in a different company with a slightly better price. At some point, it was so good that you had companies selling one let's say two-phase account with access to 200,000 or 250,000 from somewhere in between the range of $750 to $1,100, right? With barely any rules attached other than daily drawdown and max drawdown. They didn't message you about how much you could leverage per trade. They didn't do any of that, right? Because during those times, it was still fresh. And people like me had not accessed these particular platforms just yet. But it was just a matter of time. So when it first started, I was making so much money. Basically, what I was doing was I had multiple brokers, right? I had multiple accounts. I was buying accounts, not in bulk, but at a certain speed. And I was just running the trades. During that time, at some point, people were seeing me be on leaderboards across 3 or 4 different companies, right? There's been different screenshots of like 50,000, 60,000, 20,000. I was playing during that time. I was having a grand old time with how much money I was making with something that was a side project, a hobby, a thought, an idea. This is a dream of mine. Something, I know it sounds a little weird for people who don't care about trading, but if you're in the trading space, knowing that you change something in the space is kind of exciting, at least for me. I've been doing this for a very long time, and I just felt that, why not, right? I'm in this space. I'm not going anywhere. It's been forever now. Let me try something where, fuck it. What's the worst that can happen? I lose some money. It's all good. I make money. It's all good. Now, in the beginning, I made so much money that I was able to actually create a little team, right? Work on this project, and we were doing really, really well. People always asked, like, hey man, why don't you sell the automation? Because once upon a time, someone told me that you can't sell anything unless it has 5 years of concrete history. And for whatever reason, that stuck with me. And I'm glad that is something that someone said to me once upon a time. Because if I would have sold that thing, the disaster was right around the corner. I've always been the person that tells you guys, automation is not accessible for a couple of dollars. Like if you're going to find somebody who's selling an automated trading or copy trading, or they're trading for you, they're going to charge you for that. And they're not going to allow, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be like, oh, let me get $500 and I'm going to turn that into 10,000. It's going to be something where 50-50, where a lot of money up front, or your deposit has to be so strong because they don't have access to that type of funds. So because they don't have access to those type of funds, then they're willing to trade your money, right? Okay. Then things changed. A couple of years ago, a major company went down. On that company, I had a lot of money that was mine, and I never got it, right? It was all back and forth, the normal thing. I always believe that great ideas and good environments and opportunities always ruined by greed and stupidity. I don't know what the company did, but I know that there was enough people jumping into these businesses blindly, enough people promising to pass people's fundings. It starts to muddy the water, and then this situation that was basically perfect is now going to get destroyed by somebody's greed, by somebody's BS, by someone out there not doing the things they were supposed to do. And to me, that was the beginning of the end to the golden era of funded. Now, am I saying that funded accounts aren't good? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you have money, personal accounts, funded doesn't make as much sense as it used to. So let me tell you why first. I went from making 6 figures easy across multiple platforms to the systems burning money left and right. Remember, in order to get an evaluation, it has to make money. So it has to make phase 1, phase 2, and then eventually get profitable, right? If these things have so many rules around them, for somebody like me that I'm not really a coder, I was just, starting something, I'm going to start getting headaches. And I started to really get these headaches. Because of the regulation that started coming across funded companies, you started to see all these rules start to pop up. These rules are the exact thing that, yes, it's supposed to be how they evaluate you, but it's also supposed to be the things that you focus on the most with your own personal trading. So amongst all the BS that I've lived with these automated bots and burning all this money, now I'm going to say I'm still profitable because I'm not stupid, right? remember, you get paid out as like a contractor. You get paid out like a contractor on these funded companies. So at the end of the day, there's taxes to be paid, and losing is okay. If you know how taxes work, losing is not a bad thing. And this was never meant to be a major thing in my life, right? It was supposed to be like a side project, a hobby. It's something I do on the side, on the right side of my screens. I got multiple screens on the right side of me. That is what I do with those bots. Now, recently I just stopped it. I stopped the bots. I stopped everything. It was starting to get annoying and overwhelming. I couldn't keep up with the different rules and different risk and different companies. And, after some thinking, I thought, you know what? I've made money with this. I'm rehiring a different team, and I'm changing some things, and I'm opening up my mind to different things with this idea. But something positive that came out of it is what I've told the community, right? I've been leaning into certain aspects of trading because I think this is where most people's focus should be. So first, what we're going to do is we're going to cover the things that change in the industry. And then we're going to talk about how you have to perceive trading and trading funded or lives, and think about your own personal trading, because in these things that were changed and altered is the exact thing that you need to focus on, because it's a separator between you and consistency. So let's talk about it. We're going to start with, if I can find this, we're going to start with this little doc here that I came up with. Okay, so like I said, when the funded companies first started, there was not a lot of rules. It was pretty easy to understand. It was pretty much 3 key points, certain rules like don't trade over the weekends, very simple things to get. And then regulations started hitting the funded accounts. Companies started dropping, which allows these companies to make it harder for you when there's less competition. By the way, I'm going to say, if I had a funded company, I would do this exact same thing. I got to protect my capital. I got to protect my business. I cannot allow gambling, because when you start over leveraging, you're gambling, right? And that is pretty much what those bots were doing. They were going full tilt. They would make a ton of money. They would lose a ton of money. And I was okay with that, because at the end of the day, I was making a ton of money. All the losses meant absolutely nothing. We were playing a much higher scale game. We're not dealing with a couple of thousand anymore. We're dealing with a lot of money. Okay, so let's talk about some of these rules that you need to think about. One of the rules that was implemented, daily drawdown limits, right? That was always a thing, but the percentage got tighter. So even if your trade ends in profit, if your equity drops too far at any point in the day, you're disqualified. So there are companies out there that have daily drawdown rules that are kind of tight, right, for the amount of money that you're trading and for the whole purpose of trading funded, especially if you come from the past. Now, if this is your own personal account, this rule matters to you. There should be a max amount that you're willing to lose on your accounts. The thing with funded accounts is that it's not your money. So for me, like I said, I would push this to the very end, right? It's not my money. What do I care? It's $1,000. If I lose it, I lose it. I've already made XYZ amount of money. I can do this 100 times over and I'm still in profit. That was the mentality behind what I had created. Again, the whole point of this conversation is for you to learn the things that I can do in this community all the time with you via just risk management, a very calm, very, very methodical approach, and the opposite of me, which is what I do on the bots, right? The bots are full throttle, Gustavo. Full throttle. Everything is full throttle, speed. You build a certain amount of trades to get it to a certain amount of capital. Then you take that capital and you risk that capital, full risk. So think about it this way. I take 10 trades to get me to 10,000. And then on that 11 trade, I'm taking that 10,000 and we're going balls to the wall with what I would call a perfect setup. Now I'm going to explain to you throughout this video why it is that stopped working, because that's not sustainable, right? That type of risk approach is not sustainable. When you look at the students that do well, they're just getting normal percentage gains, right? They're getting what would be considered really good. Like the student who did 40%, that over a month, that is insane percentage gains. But that was one, his skill, two, market environment. The market was moving in that fashion. So daily drawdown limits. You need to pay attention to market volatility, and the issue is the high risk to reward, right? The normal 1-to-1 risk to reward, like if I risk 30 pips or 30 points, I'm aiming for 30 pips or 30 points. That's a very normal thing in the trading space, in the investment space. If I invest $1, I should get back $1 or more. That's the goal, right? And the longer that my dollar is out there, the more I should be looking to get back. Well, some of the really tight daily drawdown limits, what they do is they limit your ability to look for those very wide risk to reward. You need a much bigger account now. You need more money, right? So it kind of killed that, right? It messed up the math. If I wasn't having to invest 1,000 anymore, maybe now I got to do 2 or 3 or whatever. Profit targets with time pressure. Now this has kind of gone away, but that was a thing where they needed you needed to complete this phase in a certain amount of time. Then that never was a problem for the bots, because you would find out very quickly if they're going to pass the evaluations. There was a time period where I could literally pass evaluations in 3 days, and it was doing it all the time. Again, this is why I tell you guys, when you buy these automated systems or these pass for you people that do not have real history behind it, they might just be living a market environment, and they might not even know, or they may know, and they know that as soon as this changes, everything changes. Having history during a short period of time, a bullish Bitcoin market, a bullish gold market, that's not going to be something sustainable for you. Eventually, what you purchased or what you invested in is not going to work anymore. And that's what I lived with these bots. Remember, never sold it to, I want to make that clear. I never sold it to anyone. And if you've seen some of the numbers that bot produced, you would know that anybody in their right mind would have sold it. But I just knew, I don't know enough about this space. I know me. I know Gustavo. I know what I can do. I know the person who does this in the community, right? Who does all this in the community every single week, who trades with you guys and talks to you guys and guides you guys and helps you achieve numbers, right? Achieve success, drawdowns, withdrawals, right? The person who allows you to see what real trading looks like. But this is a different version of me. But in this is all the lessons and all the fucking mistakes and all the way that people see trading that's just wrong. It's just wrong. So let's continue. The time pressure. The time pressure for some people does affect them, right? On a personal account, you would never give a crap whether or not you grew 10% in 30 days or 10% in 90 days or 10% in a year, right? At the end of the day, I personally like personal accounts because I grew up in that space. Personal live accounts. Funded came way later. And it's good. Funded is good. But when there's a certain amount of rules, you have to ask yourself, is this really for me? Or am I just thinking with hopes and dreams of something that I saw a couple of months ago? Because the space changes like that years ago, right? It's to the point now where I think there's now more push for instant funding, which is something else, okay? Which is probably where I'm going to go with the bots next, for instant funding. It requires a bigger investment, but I think it's going to fix some of these issues of, you know what, maybe we won't go there. Maybe I'll keep that one to myself. Minimum trading days. Even if you pass in 3 days, you're required to trade for 10 or more days to prove consistency. Now, for some of these brokers, you can put in 0.01 and they're okay with that, right? You complete the 10 days. But for other brokers, you got to trade at the same risk that you were trading at. Right. And you can't cut them off at 1 or 2 pips. That exists as well. You need to know the broker. These rules are stopping you. How does it hurt you? It forces extra trades. It changes the way you trade. So for example, if you want a trade that's going to last you 3 or 4 or 5 days because this is a daily play or a weekly play, you might start thinking, maybe I got to cut this down because I still got to complete 10 days. Maybe they don't let you trade over the weekends, which is number 4, right? So now you got to go into a fresh, brand new trade. Some people are swing traders like me, position traders like me. We're going long distance on these trades. Those systems that I run, those are not swing trading. Those are major intraday, like I said. Example, 10 trades taken as fast as possible. Risk keeps going up. When I hit a certain number, so let's make believe it's 10 grand, that 10 grand gets hit everything gets put on that next trade, the whole 10 grand, right? That's the whole thing. It's this monstrous idea of going full tilt for a certain amount of time in certain market environments. No holding over the weekends or news, monster killer for that. The thing that really killed, I think, the systems is the news thing. If you know how news works, if you understand market volatility, you know the market loves to retest positions. So what would happen a lot is certain positions that I had entered in, I would have to cut them down, because if I got +1, stopped out, a pending order triggered or anything like that, the account gets cooked, or the trades don't even count, right? Some brokers do, the trades don't count. Some brokers do. If they want to get rid of you, you got to go because you broke the rules, right? These things are important for you to understand. If you understand trading, you know that some of the best moments come from swing trades that were held over the weekend. The market closes the weekly candle and we continue on. Also, during news, retesting of very strong liquidity pockets, those positions are going to get retested. And if you can't re-enter in a 10-minute window before news and after news, even though the volatility has calmed down, you're frozen there, and it messes up the flow of the trader. It messes up the ideal position. It makes you enter at positions that you never wanted to enter in the first place. Okay, that is the problem. So when I had the bots, I'm not going to get into how the entry process worked, but just understand my hands didn't touch the entry process. There was something else that I was doing in order for people to enter, in order for the bots to enter the right way, right? So because the bots do not have discerning eye, they just follow instructions. Plenty of times, accounts that were grown to a certain point with no withdrawal done yet got destroyed. Plenty of times, the evaluation was ready to pass and boom, destroyed. The amount of money that was burned making mistakes over when some of these new rules were implemented. Remember, this was a changing industry. As soon as one of the companies got hit with the court order and regulation, the rest of them started creating all these rules and all these things and pivoting, protecting themselves. I understand. And FTMO went away. FTMO, in my opinion, is the best one out there. They're very clear about what they want, and the rules don't change. It's amazing. So, but Americans cannot access FTMO, which again is one of the other reasons that tiers exist in this space for me. Inactivity penalties never really affected me, but that's something else. What if you do not want to trade? What if you don't want to trade? What if you do not want to be a part of the market this week or this month? What if you got something going on for the next 2 months? You got to trade, right? That didn't really affect the bots, but for you personally, that might be something that matters to you. Some people, they don't want to enter again, right? Some people, I have students who have been holding gold for 3 years and they enter every other month. Some brokers, that they can't do that on there. There's something I forgot to include on here: liquidating entries. There have been brokers recently, I've noticed this more and more, they use maintenance and server maintenance and different things like that, like security, and they force you to liquidate entries. For a student of mine who was holding a gold buy for the last 6 months, him having to liquidate that entry cost them thousands of pips and tens of thousands of dollars. We're talking 20, 30, 40 grand. That's not something that's going to happen on your personal live account. These are problems. These are things in the trading industry that affect traders of all different types. On the bots, if I traded in my own way, I would have jumped right out this window. Because if you know me, you know I've been buying gold since 2020. Everyone in the community buys gold. That's the way that I'm not a scalper. I'm not like looking for a 30, 40 pip moment. That's not what I do, right? I'm not saying it's wrong or right. It's not what I do. So these rules, again, affect you negatively. This is the number one rule that I hate the most. And I understand why they do it. The high watermark rule. The high watermark rule basically killed me. That between news, high watermark, equity protection, those are the things that killed my bots and killed the fun. I've lost 6 figures. I made a lot of money, right? So I'm profitable, right? I'm profitable with the company's profitable, the bots are profitable. Remember, I never sold not one access key, not one. This is all my own thing. People who know me know I work on this. People who know me, like students of mine, I kind of I tell them what I'm doing. The community, you guys have known for a while, this is what I do, right? I make it very clear. I am live account overfunded. Don't let the numbers fool you, right? We have the conversation all the time. I've said it on here because people, somewhere along the lines, I've said it and people are like, oh man, let me buy that. When are you going to open up the doors for people to buy it? And I always say no. At the beginning of the year, I reminded you, no, I'm not selling this because I'm not comfortable with what's going on. First of all, high watermark rule, what that is let's say I have a $100,000 funded account and I build up to $110,000. You think, okay, cool, I made 10 grand. Let me withdraw and then I'll get 8 and they'll get 2 and then I'll head back to where I was at 100 grand and start again, right? Very normal. For a person who's never seen 10 grand before, they want that money, but you can't do that. High watermark rules mean if you put that account back at 100,000, the account blows and you got to start again, right? So what does it do? It forces you to trade more or take a lower deposit. So I get what they're saying. You shouldn't do that on a personal account, right? You shouldn't do that on a live. You should always leave cushion room. You shouldn't send yourself back to break even. But there are moments in the current market conditions that we live in where you run into these trades that never end and you're just profiting and dragging SL and going forward, and more profit is coming in week after week. At some point, you want to get that all out of there and you want to start again fresh. People, especially beginners, people who are on the first stages of their career, it makes a lot of sense for them. The high watermark rule killed my bots because, one, you can't draw down in the way that you want to draw down, right? I can't do what I was doing, which is build up 10 trades to get to 10,000 and then go balls to the wall on the 10,000. I can't do that anymore because if it goes back to break even on the account, the original starting point, the account's done. We're over. So that kind of messed it up. Again, I understand why they did that. They did that because people like me were abusing them. Now, am I wrong? No. You say that this is what you want. You say that this is fair. I'm going to say, okay, cool. You're giving me the rules. I'm going to follow them. Point blank, period. But I understand that they see it as gambling. And I would say that, yes, for your own personal trading, you should not be doing that. You shouldn't be sending yourself back to break even because you immediately take away your position of power. You immediately take away the comfort of knowing that if I lose a couple of trades, I'm still in profit. But that's not the case for everybody, and everybody doesn't trade that way, but the rules are the rules and it is what it is. But for you as a trader, you need to think about why it is so far they've added these different rules. Why do they do daily drawdown, right? Because that's the number one thing that's going to kill a gambler, right? Allowing the market to draw down on equity so far down that only the candle matching on the next day, right? The daily movement matching the previous day's range. That's the only thing that's going to bring you back. So things like that are going to kill you. The minimum trading days, right? So you don't get lucky on 1 or 2 days. Now, there are people out there, again, that it's not luck. They waited for this one particular moment, this one particular setup. They're a very specific model, a very specific set of confluences, and they go all out on the trade. They're willing to do that. There are people with a lot of money out there who are willing to do that. I know when sometimes people hear like, oh, he lost 50,000. Well, if the motherfucker's making $1 million, what do you care, right? Everything is perspective. People go, whoa, 50,000. What if the person's a millionaire? You think they care about the 50,000 as much? What if the account is up $250,000, $300,000 and they lose 20 grand? It stings, but maybe they only wanted to pull out 200K. So this other 50, 70K is, let's see what happens with it, right? This exists in the trading world. Not everyone's trading at half a point or a percentage. The people who do that, they have the money, right? Like a bank, an institution has the money to do a lot of things. A high-end trader has the money to do a lot of things. These rules here are meant to, one, protect the company, but I think also to make sure that it's not that easy to pass and it's not that easy to abuse. And there's a lot of things that are going to get in your way if you're somebody who even knows what they're doing, but you're treating their money with disrespect. All right. And I get it. Again, I understand. So the next thing, like I was saying, the high watermark rule. This one's easy to understand. Nobody should be growing $1,000 in a day and then being back at zero by the end of the day. That shouldn't be happening. But again, funded accounts are not my money. And I was trying to do something, but the lesson in here is for you, right? The high watermark rule. You should have some sort of high watermark rule every single day in your trading, a mental one. If I grow $1,000, why am I getting in again? First of all, right? Is my next trade just as good as the initial trade that grew my account? And then also, how low am I going to go before I call it a day or call it a week or start looking for a brand new setup or pivot over to a different asset or a different, maybe I'm trading currencies and I'll move over to, I don't know, futures or something, or maybe give us a couple of days in between trades. You should have some sort of mental high watermark rule. Withdrawing, that's something about the person, right? I personally believe in resetting the accounts for beginners. Why? Because you're probably going to give that money back, so you might as well take some money out. Again, personal accounts make more sense for beginners than funded right away. Too many rules, they're going to probably end up losing the money. You should prove to yourself that you can at least grow an account before you do anything with real investment, like $1,000 investment into a funded company for $200,000. Equity protection drawdown, another rule, right? So this isn't even anything other than the way they explain it is, if your trades are live, right? So you're running trades live, equities bouncing up and down. If you draw down on some of these brokers, 1%, 1.5%, 2%, 2.5%, they kill all the trades and you lose them all. You lose a lot of the flexibility that you would basically commit to on your personal accounts. This is another rule that killed the bots because, like I said, balls to the wall trading, full tilt. And it was, again, very successful. And we're going to put a nice little bow on this at the end of this. And the news restriction. The news restriction is the other thing, right? Because news was something that I was using to my advantage. That it's, remember, not my money. So I'm like, all right, you allow me to do this during the by the way, these companies allow you to do it during the evaluations. You could trade news, you can draw down, you could do a lot of things, but you can't do it live. You can't do it with their simulation funds. Once you finally are a live trader, the news restrictions mess things up because there's usually a window between the time that you can't trade before news and the time that you can't trade after news. These windows, a lot of the time, especially assets like gold, US 30, right? These assets, when you get retested in positions where you can't risk being +1, right? If you got in a certain amount of time before that news session, and you definitely can't re-enter during the news session or that 5 or 10 minute window. That messed up a lot of things because my trading style is about being there for those news sessions, not at a full tilt risk like the bots, but at what we call defense mode, right? Like a very low end risk, participation risk, flag in the ground risk, but risk is risk. And when you put risk onto a chart and you're in the middle of news and that news session does what you wanted it to do, it gives you flexibility for future trades, right? For the continuation trades. If you're a trend trader, it gives you that next position. It makes it a lot easier for you to enter here. So we've covered some of the basic things that have happened, right? We've covered the fact that there's so many different accounts too, with high watermarks and news and all this stuff. For me personally, it does suck that this goal that I had of making, I'm going to be honest with you. My goal was $1 million per trade. That was the goal. And I thought we were going to get there. And I'm not going to give up on this. You will see me work on this. I might actually, we're going to figure it out. But I love trading, right? I love what I do in the community every day. That's how I stay so consistent. That's how I've been doing it for so long. I love what I do. But to add a little spice to life, I started doing these bots. The bots taught me something, right? So if this is the part where you really need to listen. When I'm teaching other traders, I am 100% on target, focusing on their risk, not thinking that I know people are going to trade balls to the wall sometimes. Trades are going to get out of hand, right? Things are going to get out of hand. When you get out of those situations, stop pushing. Stop. For example, I'm on a $1,000 account and I'm trading a standard. You do understand that losing 30% of your account that can't happen, right? That's what's happening on the bots. Again, the bots are you ever watch the movie Cocaine Bear? That's what the bots are. It's like this hyper aggressive, just something that I would never be able to tolerate. I don't want to look at it. right? Because then I'm gonna question it. I'm not gonna let it run its course. I was trying to build data because eventually one day maybe I might sell it, not to people for $200, but I got my own plans, man. I want to know that I did something. So just like I've done something in the educational space by actually helping traders, there are things that I'm ambitious about, and this is one of them. So the bots taught me to focus with the traders more than technicals, more than models, more than, breaking down charts and all the rest. They must understand how risk is inevitably going to screw them up and gives away their position of power. The other thing is their desire to trade during news and how they handle that, right? There's a reason why brokers picked drawdowns, news, high watermark, equity protection. And that's the things that killed the bots. If you're trading during news, your risk should be appropriate to the situation. I believe that you should be thinking of it as this is just the beginning of the next macro trend, right? If it's the right news session with the right amount of liquidity behind it and sentiment is in that direction, it makes a lot of sense for you to at least place something because it gives you flexibility, air quotes, a position of power for future trades, especially if you're a swing trader, position trader like I am, okay? And then the last piece for this is no holding over the weekends, liquidating entries, right? Being forced to liquidate entries during news. That's going to kill a lot of stuff, which means that you should be thinking about, why is it that I cut every single trade? Why is it that none of my trades, I let them play out to much bigger targets? Small percentage gains are still percentage gains. Understanding that a trade can travel for multiple days instead of 15 minutes or 30 minutes for some people is appropriate. Not everybody's going to have the same style, but you should understand how the market moves. And you're not really understanding how the market moves if you only understand it in a 5 to 15 minute interval. If most of your trades die out or go into profit in an hour, right? And then it ends there. You never look at this thing again. I think for people who are learning how to trade, they really need to look at how it moves as a whole and then assess whether or not they just want to worry about small segments of the chart. Remember, there's no right or wrong. There's only what works for you. And I think that's, max profit per day. That's another one similar to the other ones. Just for example, let's say you have to hit a $20,000 target to pass an evaluation. You can't go make 15,000 in a whole day. You have to partial out some of the risk, let that trade run to the next day, partial out more of the risk when maybe the market retraces and what you could have passed in 1 or 2 days, now it can't be done in that way. I get it. They're stopping you from going all out with the risk. They're stopping you from gambling, right? But like I say, it's not really gambling if the person knows what they're doing. But I understand. I understand that we have to balance out the game. So some brokers have been kind, other brokers are shit. Some brokers put too many rules and they died out. Some brokers are still changing their rules like every other quarter according to what's going on volatility wise. That's another thing. When the fund first started, we were dealing with 2020 markets. You know what was going on during that time. The market found a little bit of stability, but the last year and a half, it's been very unstable. It's been solid for us. If you pay attention to what I post from my students, it's been solid for us to take advantage of highly volatile markets. You do not need a lot of risk in order to gain a lot of percentage gains, but it also caused bots that are running full tilt to get squashed left and right. The cool thing is, right? So let's talk about some positives for me, because I don't want to just make you think that I'm giving up for the sake of giving up. The idea behind my bots, like I said, was to have moments that are like, holy shit, like that was the goal, right? Not what I do every day, but just moments that, man, this is the dream, right? I'm gonna end up in a book. I'm gonna be able to write a book. I'm gonna be able to explain the situation, and people are gonna know about this for decades, based off of trading and trading alone. I can't trade that way. I can't risk $10,000 to make 50,000 off of like a 15 pip move. That's just not me. If some of you have been in the community, you know what I like to do. I like to run a trend for days, weeks, months, and years. That's what I do. And I abuse the trend as it goes on an intraday level. That's the goal every single time that I try to get into the market. But what I've learned, the positive things, is that those bots made a lot more money than I think. Because yes, I may, for example, one company, I may have spent 30 grand in evaluations or 40 grand in evaluations and made 150,000. But But the bots also had to pass evaluation 1, which was 20% gains or 10 or 15% gains, depending on the broker, right? And also had to pass evaluation 2, which was 8 to 12% gains. And then finally, I get a chance to trade actual simulated money that's going to pay me. So it didn't just make what I made. It made the evaluation money and then my money. So there's something positive there for me. Why am I telling you that? Because some of you kick yourselves in the fucking ass all the time and you're very negative with yourselves. I like to think of it as there's always good things happening, and if you're paying attention to them, you can lean into them, you can build upon them. It didn't just go to shit. So those automated bots were making me a lot of money. The problem was the rules. The problem was that I'm not watching it. The problem is that my discerning eye is not there, that it's doing things that I would never do, that you would never do, that is totally against the rules. Maybe I need to take a different approach. Maybe instant funding is the goal. Maybe I need to speak to one of these brokers that'll let me run what I got to run, an aggressive model. I'll see, right? But for right now, I've decided to take a little bit of a break from the fundeds. I'm acquiring a new team. I'm taking a different approach. I'm speaking to different funded companies to see what we can do. But I felt that this video is important because some of you buy a lot of evaluations thinking that this is going to be something you Hail Mary. You have no idea how many things don't allow you to do that. First of all, there's something else. Eventually, they will email you, no matter how good your relationship is with them, and tell you you can't do that anymore. That's something else, right? So remember, you can't get mad at them for protecting their companies. You can't get mad at them for not wanting a certain amount of money being made at a certain speed. You can't get mad at them for avoiding gambling, right? That's not, you got to just understand what the environment is and make an appropriate decision. So if you're trying to get funded, no, this is going to be a very methodical passing of the evaluation in a good amount of time, right? It doesn't have to be a year to pass an evaluation. You could follow the numbers they give you. They give you those numbers for a reason. 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, because they feel that that is the safest and also harder for people to do, so that the wrong person is not passing these evaluations, right? So that people aren't just getting lucky, so that people can't do what I did and just run a system and just, take advantage, right? Again, not doing anything wrong. They adjusted, I adjust, and it is what it is. Everyone makes money, everyone's happy. So that's that. When you are thinking about whether or not you should be live or you should be funded, you need to ask yourself, why do you want to be live so bad? Some of you will buy like a $5,000 funded account. You do understand that's like $200. It's $5,000 on the screen, but you only really have access to a couple of $100 or even $1,000. I don't know what the numbers are. I've never bought such a low account, but like a $5,000 account, what's the numbers? 500, 1,000, 1,200. I'd rather trade my own money at that point. That's the whole reason why in the beginning I wasn't really interested in funded, because they were offering a $100,000 account, okay, but you could only draw down 16,000 for most of these companies. I have my own money. I don't need to access your money. But once I saw the idea of maybe I can use this to my advantage to have even more income streams, something automatic, something automated, something with my hands are not on it, and I can fulfill these other goals that I have, I thought, you know what? Let's give this a shot. And like I said, it worked out for a little bit. So if you are looking to get funded, ask yourself, why am I buying these little BS ones? Now, some people believe in that strategy. Maybe they don't have personal live funds, or maybe they'd rather trade with other people's money and that makes them more comfortable. Again, no absolutes. Ask yourself what makes the most sense. Period. Personal accounts have the flexibility of being, some of you use foreign brokers, some of you use regulated brokers. I'm not here to say one or the other, but I understand why a person would use foreign brokers. You have more leverage, you have more assets, you have more flexibility, right? And a regulated broker, you don't have as much leverage, but you have that feeling like nothing wrong can go here and they're going to withdraw. Regardless, you got to find good brokers. To be funded, for my opinion, it makes the most sense to go for the larger accounts. It makes a lot of sense for you to be ready to follow every single rule they have there. And ask yourself what your trading style is. Do you trade during news? Do you hold entries long term? Do you hold entries over the weekend? Right? These are things that matter. You got to know their fees. You got to know their spreads. Oh, I forgot to mention that. The spreads. So let me add that. Spreads and commissions. That's a fluctuating thing, and certain companies are better than others. You need to know what that looks like, right? You need to know what that looks like. More than once, you know what made me make this video and stop? Like I said, fuck this. I can't do this anymore. Last week on GBP USD, I had a very nice sell running, and that particular broker stopped me out at 50 pips. The trade was 50 pips away, right? So I was 50 pips in profit. The stop loss was 55 pips, right? So it was slightly above where I was. I forgot to change the stop loss, right? Remember, automated. I'm not really watching it. The person that I had, the bot was supposed to switch the stop loss, and it didn't do it. And the whole thing just actually slipped my SL, put me in the negatives, took the trade out, and then just killed the whole moment. It was a trade that would have went 100 something pips, and it killed the whole moment. So I said enough is enough. I can't deal with this BS. Over this year, I've lost more than I won through those bots. It's not a coincidence that the market has been heavily volatile with tariffs and everything else. It just wasn't looking good. I'm still profitable on those bots, right? I did really well. I'm happy that I did what I did. But at the end of the day, this is like a strong learning moment for you. So I'm going to recap one last time. Do not buy automated systems that don't have real history behind them. I had a lot of success, and eventually that success started dwindling when the environment started changing, when the market volatility started changing, when there's war going on in the world, when Bitcoin isn't as bullish and gold isn't as bullish and bearish, right? Isn't as ranged. When GJ is moving 900 pips to one side and covering it all on the following day. These things need your eyes. They need your decision making. They need your personal skill, experience, your discerning eye. To do that on an automated, that thing better be well coded and have a lot behind it. It cannot just be some support and resistance system. It can't just be some bands or some oscillators or some stochastics or some, broken model structures. That's not going to work. That works maybe for you with your hands, but for an automated system, you better know how the hell that thing is working. And if they're not willing to tell you, they better be willing to show you history. Other than that, it's going to be like every other automated system out there. It's good until it's not, and then it's the broker's fault. It's the market's fault. These things happen in business, right? That's another thing that was behind this. I'm sick and tired of seeing people go, oh, I got an automated system. I got this, I got that, right? I'm like, what, am I stupid? I've been doing this for a long time. Let me see if I can build something. Maybe I am stupid, or maybe it's not as simple as people make it out to be, and that's why people all over the world trade manually, right? Their fingers and their eyes still look at those screens. Maybe that's why. Maybe the only reason that so many people have automated systems that work and they get revamped is because they're trying to find the suckers to pay so that they don't have to actually learn how to do this, right? It's all automated. We'll do it for you, bro. Maybe that's why that exists. So that was part of it as well. I wanted to know, am I stupid? I can't do this and they can? Let me figure it out. I just think that this is harder than I thought it was going to be. Now I'm in now, so I'm not going to give up, but it's definitely, in the beginning, it was amazing. I keep saying that. The beginning, it was amazing. That's one of the reasons why I won't let it go. The account size, the amount of rules. Now, who should get funded? I think people who can't follow rules. People who need to be in a rule-filled environment. People who need rules around their equity, around their drawdown, around their amount of entries a day, around the assets that they trade, taking risks during news that they can't afford to take. I think those people should be funded. People who can't get access to, let's say, 10, 20 grand to put into a personal account. Those people. People who feel uncomfortable with the idea of taking 10, 20 grand of their own money and putting it into an account, 15 grand, 30 grand. Those people, it makes a lot of sense because you can pay $1,000 to $1,200, $1,500 past their evaluations and you have access to that. Again, on screen, it'll look like $200,000, $400,000, but in reality, it's only $20,000, $40,000, $18,000, right? I don't know if it's marketing or if it's easier to understand the numbers that way for these companies, or if it's just that's the way it's always been, so we're going to keep it like that. But I think people get sold by this idea of, I have access to $400,000. Do you? You have access to 40,000, to 20,000, to 35,000, right? And that's it. That answers the majority of the questions that you guys have asked me. Once again, I am going to quadruple down on this idea that I'm not looking to sell this to your average Joe Schmo, right? Like, hey, give me your $500 and join our bot. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in any of that. Signals or, trying to help non-traders. That's not my thing. It's never been my thing. I'm not planning on changing my mind. I've told some of you out there, if you're watching this video, learn to trade. Learn so that you can have, a discerning eye as to whether or not someone's trying to play you. Someone's trying to scam you. I've spent a lot of money over the last 3 years. I've made a lot of money in the funded space. I've spent a lot of money in this funded space. I've spent 6 figures easily. I don't even know the exact numbers because I would have to add up multiple years, but easily spent 6 figures to make a lot of money. Okay. I've been on the leaderboards for different companies, and I'm still telling you, I personally believe that personal accounts is still king. Are there great companies out there? Yes. Do your research, know the rules. Do not get glitz and glamored by the account sizes. Understand what you're getting yourself into. And if you're lucky enough to be in this community, ask me. I will tell you. There are companies that I support that, even though we may not see eye to eye anymore on certain things, I still think they're a great company. But like anything else, if it doesn't serve me anymore, what's the point, right? If I can trade my own money, what's the point? There's plenty of traders out there that should still be looking to get funded because they don't have the funds or the self-control to do it on their own personal live accounts. But know your environment, know what's going on. And if you didn't get anything from this video, please stop buying automated systems where they're not willing to provide you some sort of history. Not a person or two who have made money. I'm talking about, this is why this bot works. This is what you should expect. These are your risks. If they don't want to tell you exactly how it works and why it works and all that other stuff, this is how long it's been working for. You want to see it through a certain amount of time so that you know full well that if anything happens with the market's volatility, it knows how to adjust. Because if you didn't hear it or you skimmed through it in an earlier part of this video, I know one of the major reasons as to why my bots stopped working: the volatility of the market. I didn't adjust for that. I didn't know how to adjust for that. I'm not a coder. I'm just learning this now as I go along, right? Again, hobby. I know people out there make you believe like, oh, they knew how to sell cars, so they know how to trade, and then they know how to trade, so they know how to teach. And because they know how to teach, they know how to make systems, and they're good at everything. There's nothing that ever goes wrong. There's nothing that ever, is an obstacle for them. They do everything to the highest level. It's always so perfect. Maybe I'm just dumb. Maybe I'm stupid. But I've been around this space for a long time. I've raised a lot of traders. I've created a lot of great testimonials. I've been around, again, you don't stay around this industry for as long as I have, being full of shit. So I personally believe that it is in your best interest to question everyone and everything. That if you don't feel comfortable with investing into something, don't fucking do it. That if somebody goes, hey man, you need to get in on this because after this, I'm going to raise the price to this automated system where you don't really have to learn how to trade and it's going to be raised to 10,000, but right now I'm going to give it to you for 1,000. That this person is more than likely full of shit. Because I know from my perspective, if those bots would have continued to work and I would have hit 5 years of history, you think that I'm selling this for $1,000? 6 figures are nothing. 6 figures are nothing to get involved. And we're not talking 100K. If the system in 1 year off of one broker made 300,000, let's say that year it burned 25 to 30 grand in evaluations, but it made 300,000. I'm just thinking of one broker off the top of my head right now. If it burned 30 grand, 40 grand, 50 grand, 60 grand, but it made 300,000, it made more than 300,000 because I have to pass evaluation 1, evaluation 2, and then make money, right? So how much did it make? Roughly speaking, let's give it a ballpark, 600,000, 700,000. I burn 200,000 to make 700,000. I will do that every single day for the rest of my life if I have to. But that's not what happened, right? But if I just took that small segment of time and showed it to somebody with $1 million to invest, quickly that would get done. But they're getting played because I only took a small amount of section of that bot working. And that is how most of you get played. You only look at the small little piece of history. And then when the market shifts, new president, war in Ukraine, tariff wars with China, wars in Palestine, war in Israel, war here, war there, right? All these things, new rules, different environments, right? Can't do this, can't do that. Everything changes, right? That's the way it goes. Maybe one day I'll take those same bots and put them on personal accounts. Well, not personals, but regular live accounts without restrictions. Maybe one day we'll do that. Not today, not right now. For right now, I want to use other people's money if they will allow me. So if we're having that conversation, please reach out to me right now. And other than that, man, we move forward. As always, happy trading. I hope you learned something. Stop letting yourselves get scammed. Start focusing on things that matter, like how much drawdown you're approaching every single day, your percentage risk, right? How much risk are you really putting on every single trade? Understanding that it's not sustainable for you to trade in that way, unless you want to be playing the up and down game all the time with the market, which is also not sustainable. Most people burn out because of that reason. And the rest of it, man, that's it. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me directly. As always, if you're watching this in the community, you already know that. If somehow this video gets out there into the world, or I decide to put it on YouTube, you can reach me on Telegram or Instagram at Gustavo Zaps. And that's it. As always, happy trading.